All right, now that I have my green button all safe and happy and ready to go, we are going to pretend that this is part of our pattern. I've got my dark piece and my light piece, and I need them to line up and button together exactly. Okay, so I've laid them on top of each other, and then I'm going to mark them just right in the middle of that buttonhole. You can see that. There's our buttonhole mark. And now I want to show you, this is my button attaching foot, my button fastener foot is maybe what it's called. Not every machine has this, but it's a very handy little tool, and I wanted to show it to you anyway. I know we hand attached buttons 3 different ways, but why not show the 4th way too? So the cool thing about this is that I'm going to stick my button in the machine like that, and see how it just kind of lines up for those holes. I have to do some measuring to find out the distance of my holes. You can do that manually while you just hand turn your wheel and drop your needle to make sure it's the right distance, or you can measure it with your seam guide. But make sure you hand turn your wheel to lower and raise your needle until you have everything exactly how you want it. But the cool thing is, it just stitches back and forth through those holes, just like sort of a non-traveling zigzag stitch. And then that little guy that comes down in the middle keeps it loose enough that when you pull the button foot out, there's just enough of a wiggle to it that it can be buttoned. So we're gonna show that right now. Okay, the first thing we want to do to stitch our button on is come to the back of the machine like I showed you before. I'm gonna drop my feed dogs because this can't travel. I don't want to go back and forth. So, I've got them dropped. I'll turn my machine on. Try and get you a good view. Okay. And cross my fingers that this goes really well. Here's my piece of fabric with, oh no, that's not my piece of fabric. Here's my piece of fabric with the dot on it. And I'm going to center that button right on the dot. There we go. So, goodness, I wish that light wasn't, did that help at all? No. Turn it off. There we go. Alright, so I've got it centered on there, and now as I lower my needle, I can see that it's hitting right on the foot. I'm going to try and give you the best view. So I need to adjust my needle over. I'm going to set it on the buttonhole setting, which is 61 on my machine, and I'll show you up here. I don't have a stitch length, my feed dogs are down, and then these are going to be auto settings, so don't mess with them, but it's got my little button picture right there, and foot M, which is the foot that I'm using, so I know that I've got everything set. Now I just need to make sure I have my needle in the right spot. Thank goodness, I wish you could see better. So I'm checking that one, and that's going down into the buttonhole properly. And now I'm going to check the other one, and that's going in properly too, so I know I'm good. So I can go forward and stitch it. Now it's just going to be like the buttonhole. Oops. There we go. Make sure my presser foot's all the way down. And I'm just going to let it do its own thing and see how it's attaching it on its own, and then it stops on its own. And I can raise it up. I need to raise the needle manually and pull it out. Now they leave it long because they say, being the instruction manual, say to actually pull it back through and tie a knot to fasten it just to make sure that it stays put. We'll do that in a minute. I want to keep going with my actual second row of buttonholes, or second row of whatever, holes for the button. And then we do tie them later. ton of strings going right now. Okay, we're good to go. Whoa. And it looks like I've lost my bobbin thread, so pardon me. Okay, we should be back in action for that second row of holes. And it's doing its thing. Sometimes, I don't know, I probably don't need to do this, but once it's done one cycle and stays put, I sometimes tell it to do another cycle. Probably don't need to, but I like to. Okay, and now I'm going to turn my machine off so you can see it a little bit better. What's going on? Remember that little middle guy that I showed you earlier? He is holding up the thread, and so if I raise the presser foot and slide my button out, there we go. Got it loose. There. See how on the top row I only did one cycle and on the bottom row I did two. Okay, I guess I could admit that this 2 cycles is too many, but now we know. Anyway, that is how to attach a button without having to thread a needle and whatever. It feels really nice to be able to do. So I'm going to trim these and we're going to check and make sure they go through the hole now. Alright, moment of truth. Got my machine stitched button and my machine stitched buttonhole. And just slide one into the other. Line them up. And, oh, the magic. There we go. That is how to stitch a buttonhole and how to attach a button 3 ways manually or machine. And I hope that was a fun lesson.